The Messerschmitt Me 323 Gigant loomed over World War II's battlefields like a behemoth from another world. The Gigant name was no exaggeration. It was the war's largest land-based transport aircraft, its jaw-dropping 181-foot wingspan dwarfing its contemporaries. Known as the Flying Whale for its massive 12-ton payload capacity, this colossus boasted the incredible ability to devour tanks, trucks, and even entire platoons, carrying them across vast distances to reshape front lines at will, promising to take Axis logistics to a whole new level. Roaring off the runway with 6 Gnome-Rhône radial engines, it left the Me 321 glider on which it was based in the dirt, perfectly embodying the Third Reich's soaring ambition and technological daring. By giving Hitler the means to project German military might across Europe and Africa with unprecedented speed and scale, the Gigant was the ultimate vehicle for the Fuhrer's twisted dreams of conquest. The idea of what would eventually become the Messerschmitt Me 323 originated with Operation Sea Lion, Nazi Germany's planned invasion of Britain. In the summer of 1940, as the German military made preparations for the offensive, they realized they lacked a viable means of transporting heavy equipment across the English Channel during the initial stages of an airborne assault. The Luftwaffe's existing transport aircraft, such as the venerable Junkers Ju-52, were simply too small to carry the tanks, artillery pieces, and other heavy equipment necessary for establishing and expanding a beachhead. This deficiency threatened to undermine the entire invasion plan, as the airborne forces would be left without heavy support in the critical early hours of the operation. Recognizing this shortcoming, the German High Command issued a requirement for a new class of aircraft, a large assault glider capable of carrying either an 88mm gun and its half-track tractor or a Panzer IV medium tank. This ambitious specification reflected the German military's innovative approach to combined arms warfare, seeking to merge the speed and surprise of airborne operations with the firepower and mobility of armored units. Although rising Luftwaffe losses in the Battle of Britain led Hitler to postpone Operation Sea Lion indefinitely, the need for a heavy air transport capability remained. The German military's focus was already shifting eastward towards the planned invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. The vast expanses of the Eastern Front would require a logistical capability far beyond anything previously attempted, making the development of a heavy transport aircraft more urgent than ever. For the Germans, there was no time to waste. On October 18, 1940, just 4 months after the fall of France, the Reich Air Ministry gave aircraft manufacturers Junkers and Messerschmitt a mere 14 days to submit proposals for this new super-heavy transport glider. The extreme time pressure underscored the project's critical importance to Nazi war planning. Junkers proposed the Ju-322 Mammoth, a flying wing design. However, the prototype proved somewhat unstable, as well as impractical due to the challenge of acquiring the correct type of timber for its all-wooden design, leading to its cancellation. Meanwhile, Messerschmitt's response was originally designated as Me-261W, then changed to Me-263 before settling on Me-321. This behemoth of the skies was to be the largest glider ever built, dwarfing all previous designs in both size and capacity. The first Me-321 prototype emerged in early 1941, a marvel of aeronautical engineering for its time. With a wingspan of 180 feet and a length of 92 feet, 6 inches, it was larger than many contemporary bombers. The glider's cavernous cargo was 10 feet wide, 11 feet high, and 36 feet long, providing ample space for even the largest military vehicles of the day. To achieve the required payload capacity, Messerschmitt's engineers employed a number of innovative design features. The wings were high-mounted and had a significant amount of dihedral, which provided stability and helped distribute the immense weight of the cargo. The fuselage was constructed using a combination of steel tubing and wooden spars, covered with doped fabric to save weight while maintaining structural integrity. One of the most distinctive features of the Me-321 was its nose section, which could be hinged upward to allow for front-loading of vehicles and equipment. This design element greatly simplified the loading and unloading process, particularly for large, unwieldy cargo such as tanks or artillery pieces. The glider's landing gear was another unique aspect of its design. To support the enormous weight of the fully loaded aircraft during landing, the Me-321 was equipped with a total of 22 wheels. These were arranged in two main groups of 9 wheels each under the fuselage, with 2 outrigger wheels on each wing to prevent the massive wings from scraping the ground during landing. On February 25, 1941, the massive glider took to the skies for its maiden flight. The test pilot Carl Bauer reported that the aircraft handled surprisingly well for its size, although it required immense towing power to get airborne. The towing arrangement for the Me-321 presented a significant challenge. Initially, a trio of Messerschmitt Bf-110 heavy fighters in a Vic formation was used to tow the glider, a dangerous and complex arrangement dubbed Troika Schlepp. Later, a specialized 5-engine aircraft, the Heinkel HE-111Z Zwilling, was developed specifically for towing the Me-321. Despite these challenges, the Me-321 entered limited service in 1941 and saw action during Operation Barbarossa. However, its operational use revealed several limitations. The glider was vulnerable to enemy fire, difficult to tow, and once landed, immobile without specialized recovery equipment. These shortcomings, coupled with the changing strategic situation, led to a pivotal decision in the development of what would become the Me-323 Gigant. In early 1941, as the challenges of operating the Me-321 became apparent, the decision was made to create a powered variant. This new aircraft would retain the massive size and payload capacity of the Me-321, but would be capable of independent flight, dramatically increasing its operational flexibility and usefulness. Messerschmitt engineers faced the daunting task of transforming a massive unpowered glider into a functional self-propelled aircraft, capable of carrying heavy loads over long distances. The most obvious and crucial change was the addition of engines. The Me-323 was designed to be powered by 6 engines, a decision that would give the aircraft its distinctive appearance and nickname, Gigant. The choice of power plant fell on the Gnome-Rhône 14N radial engines, each capable of producing 990 horsepower. These French-designed engines were selected partly out of necessity, as German engine production was already stretched thin, supplying power plants for fighter and bomber aircraft. The engines were mounted on the wings in a unique arrangement, 3 on each wing, with the inboard pair on each side housed in a single nacelle. This configuration helped distribute the thrust across the wingspan while minimizing drag. The use of 6 engines was not just a matter of achieving the necessary power, it also provided a measure of redundancy, allowing the aircraft to continue flying even if 1 or 2 engines failed. Incorporating these engines required significant structural modifications to the airframe. The wings were strengthened to support the weight and thrust of the engines, and the fuselage was reinforced to handle the increased stresses of powered flight. Despite these changes, the aircraft retained much of the Me-321's structure, including its wooden spars and fabric covering, to keep weight to a minimum. The updated model featured a more conventional landing gear configuration. At the front of the aircraft, a bogie with 4 small wheels provided stability. Along each side of the fuselage, 2 rows of 3 larger wheels were installed, maintaining the multi-wheel design principle. To reduce drag, these wheel assemblies were partially enclosed by streamlined covers. One of the most challenging aspects of the Me-323's design was achieving a balance between payload capacity and range. The aircraft needed to carry substantial loads, but also fly far enough to be strategically useful. To address this, the designers incorporated additional fuel tanks in the wings and fuselage, bringing the total fuel capacity to around 3,860 gallons. The cockpit of the Me-323 was designed to accommodate a crew of 5, 2 pilots, 2 flight engineers, and a radio operator. The flight engineers were housed in small cabins within the wings, positioned between the inboard and center engines on each side. This unusual arrangement allowed them to monitor engine performance closely and adjust as needed during flight. Defensive armament was also considered in the design. The Me-323 was equipped with up to 5 13mm MG-131 machine guns positioned to provide coverage against attacking fighters. One gun was mounted in a dorsal position behind the wings, 2 were in waist positions, and 2 were in the fuselage. By late 1941, the first Me-323 prototype was ready for testing. The transformation from glider to powered transport was complete, at least on paper. The first Me-323 prototype took to the skies in late 1941. Initial flight tests revealed both the strengths and weaknesses of the Gigant. The aircraft demonstrated an impressive ability to carry heavy loads, living up to its design specifications. The spacious cargo hold easily accommodated large vehicles and equipment, validating the concept of a heavy-lift transport aircraft. However, with a maximum speed of only 136 miles per hour at sea level, it was painfully slow by the standards of the day. This lack of speed made it extremely vulnerable to enemy fighters, a problem that would plague the aircraft throughout its operational life. The aircraft's handling characteristics also presented challenges. The massive size and weight of the Me-323 made it sluggish to respond to control inputs, and its low power-to-weight ratio resulted in poor climb performance. Test pilots reported that taking off with a full load required careful management of the 6 engines and a long runway. One of the most significant issues uncovered during testing was the aircraft's limited range. Fully loaded, the Me-323 could only fly for about 620 to 750 miles. This restricted its strategic utility, particularly for long-distance transport missions envisioned by the German High Command. To address these issues, Messerschmitt engineers implemented several refinements. The engines were upgraded to more powerful Gnome-Rhône 14N4849 models, each producing 1,140 horsepower, providing a much-needed boost in performance. The defensive armament was also increased, with some later versions carrying up to 11 machine guns to improve survivability against fighter attacks. Another crucial modification was the addition of rocket-assisted takeoff units. These rocket pods, mounted beneath the wings, provided a short burst of additional thrust during takeoff, allowing the Me-323 to get airborne more quickly with heavy loads. This was particularly useful when operating from short or improvised runways. Despite these improvements, the fundamental limitations of the Me-323's design could not be entirely overcome. Nevertheless, the pressing need for heavy transport capabilities on the Eastern Front meant that the aircraft was rushed into production and service even as testing and refinement continued. By September 1942, the first production Me-323s were rolling off the assembly line and being delivered to Luftwaffe units. The Me-323 Gigant entered service with the Luftwaffe in November 1942, just as the tide of war was beginning to turn against Nazi Germany. Its first major deployment was in the Mediterranean theater, where it played a crucial role in the desperate attempt to supply Axis forces in Tunisia. The Gigant's impressive cargo capacity made it invaluable for transporting heavy equipment and supplies across the Mediterranean. A single Me-323 could carry up to 130 troops or smaller numbers of vehicles, including a medium tank or 2 trucks. This allowed the Luftwaffe to airlift substantial quantities of men and material to North Africa, helping to sustain Axis forces in the face of growing Allied pressure. However, the Me-323's operational debut also exposed its critical vulnerabilities. Its slow speed and poor maneuverability made it an easy target for Allied fighters. Losses were heavy from the outset, with many Gigants falling prey to patrolling Spitfires and P-40 Kitty Hawks. The most devastating single engagement for the Me-323 fleet occurred on April 22, 1943. Allied fighters intercepted a formation of 27 fully loaded Gigants, escorted by Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighters over the Sicilian Straits. In the ensuing battle, 16 or 17 of the transport aircraft were shot down, a severe blow to the Axis supply effort. Despite these losses, the Me-323 continued to play a vital role in Luftwaffe operations. On the Eastern Front, it was used to transport supplies to besieged German forces, notably during the failed attempt to resupply the encircled Sixth Army at Stalingrad in the winter of 1942 to 1943. As the war progressed, the Me-323's role evolved. It was increasingly used for evacuations, helping to extract German troops and equipment from threatened areas. During the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943, Gigants helped evacuate Axis forces to the Italian mainland. Throughout its service life, various attempts were made to improve the Me-323's survivability. Some units experimented with additional armor protection, while others focused on developing more effective escort tactics. However, nothing could alter the aircraft's vulnerability to fighter attack. Production of the Me-323 continued until April 1944, with a total of 213 aircraft being built. Several variants were developed during this time, including the Me-323D6, which featured improved engines and increased defensive armament. Towards the end of the war, some Me-323s were pressed into service as makeshift bombers. Loaded with bombs and sent on what were essentially one-way missions, these Gigants met predictably tragic ends, a final, futile use of these remarkable aircraft. The lessons learned from the Me-323's operations and shortcomings influenced post-war transport aircraft design. The concept of a large cargo aircraft capable of carrying vehicles and heavy equipment would be refined and improved in later designs, such as the American C-124 Globemaster II and the Soviet Antonov AN-22. Today, no complete Me-323 survives, a testament to the aircraft's vulnerability and the intensity of the conflict in which it served. However, parts of the aircraft can be seen in museums, including a main wing spar at the Luftwaffe Museum der Bundeswehr in Berlin. In 2012, the wreck of an Me-323 was found in the Mediterranean Sea near Sardinia. This underwater time capsule provides valuable insights into the aircraft's construction and the circumstances of its final flight. The story of the Me-323 Gigant is one of ambition, innovation, and ultimately, limitations. Born from the need to support grand strategies of conquest, it ended its days trying desperately to stave off defeat.